All right, we're on if you want to keep talking.
What was that?
We're going right now if you want to keep talking about the 1100.
Well, actually, I'll start off from the first question you sent me about how I got into
Yeah.
lifting, just so we have some context first. So, throughout my childhood, I did on average six. I did football 6th grade to 1 year in college, so that's 8, 9 years of football. I did 4 or 5 years of basketball and baseball, and honestly, my favorite sport, even though it was, like I said, I was way more known for football, but I love track and field. I did the sprints, the 1, the 200, the 4x1. For a year or two, they tried me the 400. I just had no gas. Like, even when I was 200 pounds, I just feel like genetically I'm super fast twitch. I could never really improve my endurance like that. I mean, the 400, anyone who's done track knows that's like the toughest event. Like the 4 and 800, it's like you still have to have a ton of speed, but you have to have the endurance along with it. Um, but yeah, I always loved track, ironically, because it was the only sport I did that was just about me, right? It was the only
Yeah.
sport where I could be like, hey, I control the variables, my work ethic, my planning, because in football, I was a running back. I could run for 200 plus yards. We still get our ass kicked. And then I'm thinking, what else could I have done? Like I did everything, so that was always the thing about team sports. But the camaraderie is really cool. Like when you're doing football, baseball, basketball, you have great bonds and relationships with everyone on the team. Like I said, when you're losing, when you're just shit as a team, but you're doing good by yourself. Like I said, you're in the meetings and your coach afterwards like, oh, we got to get better. And I'm thinking, well, I'm already better. So, I mean, like I'd always think that. But in track, my the coolest achievement was my senior year. I won districts and went to state, and I narrowly missed making it to finals. And my best was 11.2. In Oregon, like, man, it's like track in Texas, Florida, all these states, they're running like 10 flat now. It's crazy. Oregon's never been known as a huge state for high level sprinting. But yeah, I was proud of that. And like I said, I think looking back, it's because it was all me, like in track, you still, you have relays, you still train with people, but it's the only sport I did before powerlifting where I was like, man, this is truly all in my corner. Like I control the outcome. I have no one to blame or be happy for but myself. And I always really liked that when it came to track. So then fast forward, I graduated high school and I did a year of Division II football at a college called Western Oregon. It was in Monmouth, Oregon. It was about 30, 40 minutes from where I live right now, again in Corvallis, Oregon. Corvallis is where Oregon State's at. It's a D1 school. Um, so, I redshirted and, I showed some sparks, but I don't know. It's just like high school and college sports are different, man. High school, it's like the name, you do it for the fun of the game. You're with people you grew up with. And, I'm not saying it's not serious, but you get to college, you're doing film 3, 4 hours a day. You're doing workouts. You always do workouts 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning, along with practice if it's in season, spring ball, summer, fall. Um, so I redshirted and I thought maybe I could play in the coming year, but I don't know. I just got this feeling that I was like, man, this just doesn't feel right. And then I did spring ball, and then summer I came back home. Oh, my gut was telling me, man, it's over. I wasn't injured or anything, but mentally it's like, and ironically, my coach right before we left for the summer, I my favorite part of football was the training, the lifting and the sprints because I was competitive and I was already one of the stronger people in the weight room, even being a red shirt. Like I was power cleaning 385 squats. Obviously, back then, football squats, we're not hitting depth like we are in powerlifting, but I was doing like 550, I think. Bench, I didn't really worry about bench in high school and that year in college because I'm a running back. So obviously, yeah, you want some power. Like if you're a lineman or if you're a linebacker, of course, it makes sense to really work upper body. But I really only ever trained legs, which ironically, because I tell people like it probably was genetic. To some degree, I've always had big legs, but early on, even before I started lifting at 13, like I was obsessed with doing lunges, body weight squats. We have a park a quarter mile from here, and there's this huge hill. I would do hill repeats running, and I would ride my bike a lot. So I was doing all these things to work and stimulate my legs long before I ever touched a weight. So then, obviously, once I started lifting in 6th, 7th grade, my legs only got bigger because I was I already knew how to work. Uh, I knew how to contract and use my legs even before I ever touched weights because most of the things I was doing pre weights were lower body oriented. Um, so, so yeah, like that the summer of 2013, I remember calling the coach and I said, I'm not coming back, whatever. And And at this point, I was working out in the gym, I'm just kind of bro lifting. And then there was a local meet at our gym, July, August time frame of 2013. And the gym owner's like, you should do it. Like I knew about a month ahead of time. So I kind of experimented with what weights I could possibly do. So I go to the meet and I squat. I think I squat like 500 in knee wraps. And I never used knee wraps in my life. It was hilarious. I show up to the meet and I didn't have sleeves. And I'm like, oh, should I just lift without sleeves? And then this older guy's like, no, man, you can borrow my wraps. And he wrapped them so loose, it's like they didn't do shit. Like he wrapped them so loose, they almost came off while I was squatting. So yeah, I squatted 500 wraps. I benched like 270 and I deadlifted 600. My first 2 years I did conventional. Yeah, it was about 2 years. Because I didn't really deadlift in high school. I know it sounds weird, but football players, most of the time we're doing cleans, snatches. So that's why I got really good at snatches going into my year of college. I think I deadlifted a sparingly few amount of times here and there, but never consistently. So going into that meet, I really didn't have an idea where I was at. And I pulled like 500, 530 in training, like a week or two before. I didn't know anything about Pika back then. And then I pulled 600. So then I was like, cool, this is like a new outlet where I could be competitive and hold myself accountable, push myself, kind of like track. So I went into it now with this mindset of like, because, and I'm not shitting on this, but a lot of kids, you see it all over social media. It's cool to have these huge goals. Like a lot of kids start powerlifting. I'm going to be the best one day. I'm going to break this total. I'm going to break this squat, bench, deadlift record. And that's cool. But I didn't have any. Hell yeah, my cat's coming down. She's looking at me. Yeah, they give you the stanky eye. The cats, they do.
My cat's on the legs right now.
Yeah, no, we got a black and white cat and we got a striped cat. They're sisters. They're from the same litter. Yeah, so I love them to death. I miss them a lot while I was gone. But so yeah, I did the first meet, and at that point, I didn't think I was that good. Obviously in Oregon at the time, I was 19 years old. I was one of the best juniors in Oregon, but I'm not saying that doesn't mean anything. But you know how it is. Certain states are just more stacked. Like I said with track, it's the same with powerlifting. I mean, Texas, Florida, California. I mean, in all those states, powerlifting runs way deeper. There's way more guys at a higher level. Like Oregon and Washington, the Northwest in general, they're just not known for having a lot of great powerlifters. But one of the questions you said, I'm going to kind of go into when I first maybe thought. So I joined the Marines in 2015 because, like I said, I dropped out of college. Then I was just working Home Depot and construction for a year and a half. So it was like 2-3 months before I was going to boot camp in San Diego, because anyone from the West Coast, west of the Mississippi, you get shipped to San Diego for boot camp in the Marines. So I was like, hey, I don't know where I'm going to go for the foreseeable future. And at the time, Chris Duffin had this gym. It was called Elite Performance something. Yeah. Because he didn't switch into the Kabuki till years after, once he started blowing up. So obviously at the time, he was the best powerlifter in Oregon. He had this gym in Portland. So I drove down there and I was just hoping to meet him, just say hi or take a picture with him. And I was deadlifting and I was doing like, 680, 700 range. This is when I first started sumo. And, he was in between meetings, kind of, doing his business stuff at the gym, because they had offices at the gym for his business stuff. He was already starting to come out with the bars back then, at least the prototypes. So he was busy back then. But I saw him in between a meeting and I came up to him like, hey, Chris. And I was like nervous shaking. I'm like, hey, can you go watch me deadlift? If you're busy, I get it. But, if you could just watch me and just give me a pointer or something, and he had this stern look because he always looks serious. And that's when he was at his biggest, like 280, 290. He looked like a freaking demigod. So that made it more intimidating, because see him in a person, he looked way bigger than on pictures or videos on Instagram or Facebook at the time. And he was like, yeah, okay, let's go. So I go over there, I think it was 6 reps exactly. It was like 716. So I pull it, I pull a deadlift, lock it out. And I look over to him and he's like, so that's really good. He's like, your technique is like, I really have nothing to say. And I was like, what? I was kind of blown away. I was expecting him to be critical. And then he said some other things, but the one that I remember is he's like, I think you could be one of the best one day. I mean, I don't see why not. He's like, you got the genetics, you obviously have the body type. If you stick with it, I think you could be good or great. And that was when it first got in my mind, like, wow, a guy at that level. And I could tell he wasn't kissing my ass, because this dude's serious, always to the point. So I kind of kept that in the back of my brain. I was like, cool, Chris Duffin thinks my deadlift technique's pretty solid. So then, a few months later, I enlist in the Marines, do boot camp for 3 months. In the first 2-3 years, it's like I was training, but I wasn't, like going to field ops and deployments and stuff. It just, I trained for 4 to 6 weeks, and then I'd go to the field for a month, wouldn't be able to work out at all. So it was just hard to build momentum. A lot of people, it's like probably like that, like people in the oil rigs or careers like that, where it's like, you work for 6-8 weeks, you don't have access to a real weight room or, obviously for powerlifting. And then you come back, but it's just a back and forth. So for 2 to 3 years, I was kind of stagnant because like that, we would run 2-3 miles a day in the morning. I'd work 14, 16 hours. Then I'd lift like 8 to 10 o'clock at night, just brutal. Didn't sleep very much because, just so much going on. And then, that's what I always tell people. I was stuck at a 750 deadlift for 3.5 years, So when people complain, oh, it's been 6-8 months, I'm like, bro, well, you're preaching to the choir, man. I've been there. I've been there multiple times over, man. That's what makes it frustrating at times. And I remember in 2018, I went to Australia for deployment. It was awesome, and I loved it. Australian people are amazing, super polite and nice, and they actually had a legit weight room. So for 6-7 months, I finally got to train consistently for 6+ months without, getting fucked over and not having access to weights. And then it was weird because in Australia, they had like a lot of their plates are kilograms because, like Americans were oblivious to the fact that most everywhere else in the world, Europe, Australia, etc., if you go to gyms, they're not going to be in pound plate increments. It's going to be, 10, 15, 20, 25 kilos. So it was like 815, 820 because I used a combination of kilo plates with like change plates that were pound plates. I knew it was over 800, but I pulled that at the end of that deployment. I was like, shit, okay, we're getting somewhere. And at the time I was 225, maybe I wasn't more than 230. Let's just say 230. So I get back, and at the time, the all-time record was 931. It was held by, I think, a Russian, or it might have been an American or Russian, one of the two. But back then, I was super light. Like, I wasn't a true 275er. And so I went back, and I told the owner of my gym, his name was Rick Simmons at Ironmongers, and I was like, hey, Rick, I finally pulled 800. Like, I'm finally going somewhere. And at that time, I was squatting, about 650, 680 in sleeves. So my squat was improving too, and bench. But bench, man, to this day, bench, I'm right there, but it's like, man, it meets. It's just like whatever I do in training, it just seems like it meets. I have to just go 10, 15 pounds down. I don't know if it's because the low bar, affects my shoulders come bench, but like bench is the one lift where when you peak, you don't really have much. It's not like squat and deadlift. I can peak and know I got 2 to 3% more on meet day as long as I feel fresh. You probably have seen that before, but with bench, like whatever I do, I know, hey, that's what I'm going to do. Maybe a little less. You can't be like, oh, well, I bench 450 in training, I'm going to do 480 on the platform. I've never heard of that in my life. Has it happened? Probably. I mean, it's like there's outliers, right? There's probably that one dude who's benched 20 to 30 pounds more than a meet in training, but yeah, don't bank on that being you. Trust me, that ain't me. Every meet, I'm like,
That's not me either.
yeah, like bench, you just got to be more honest at the end of prep. Like, okay, because I pressed 500. I did 500 with a solid pause to end prep. And then at the meet, my issues with the butt, man. Like I think at meets, I just get so worried about power off my chest. I tend to overdo, I turn the leg drive into kind of like what do you call it? That cringy exercise people always roast, a hip thrust. Like my leg drive is consistent and fine in training, but then at meets, I'm so worried about, once I get the press command just exploding off my chest, I always somehow, that's what I'm really going to work on this offseason, just really hammer Larson press so I could trust my upper body to do. I'm not saying you can't use leg drive, but with me, I've already talked to my coach and other people. I think that's what I need to do because I'm capable of doing 500 plus, but it's like I self-sabotage mentally overdoing leg drive. It's like I don't need to. It's like at the meet, the Texas meet, I did 474. I narrowly missed 484, and I didn't even use leg drive. I was like, I'm just going to play it super safe, just so I get 1 to 2 benches in there because I knew as long as I got 470, 480, I was going to be on track to still secure the all-time total. But yeah, so I get back and Rick Simmons, it was called Ironmonger's Gym. So Camp Pendleton's Oceanside, California, which is 40 minutes north of San Diego. So it's technically considered a northern suburb of San Diego. So this gym is near there. And he was like, yeah, we got USPA California State Championships in San Marcos, California. It was in March of 2019. So I was like, cool, let's do it. And And this is when I started, going transition, as they say, you know. So at that meet, I did 848, third attempt. It was really smooth. And I'm like, sweet. Now I'm like 70, 80 pounds from the total. And then a few weeks after, you ever been to like a deadlift party where gyms put on events? Everybody just has fun, just squat, bench, and deadlift, go ham. So I didn't even know about this till like a week 4. And my buddy's like, hey, we should go to this, man. It's this cool gym, they're putting on an event, let's just have fun. And and at first I'm not going that heavy, because it was 2, 3 weeks after the meet. I ended up going there and I pulled 900. I was like, shit, in the span of 4 months, I went from basically 800 to 900, and I'm right there now. So then next year in 2020, I do another meet exactly 11 months later. And that was when I broke my first 2 all times, 933 and 948 at 275. And it was crazy because the trajectory, like in a year and a half, I went from thinking, okay, I might possibly, I think I have a chance. I don't know if I'm going to do it. But yeah, a year later, I did it twice, So that's when I really started to believe myself. And I've always been a realist in the way that like I have huge goals, but I'm like very honest with myself, like, okay, this could be a long-term goal, but we got to do this, this, and this. Like, it's like if you're at an 800-pound squat and you say, I want to do 1,000, it's like, is that possible? Yeah, but you got a lot of other things like to work out before then. I'm not saying you can't have big goals, but that's why so many people burn out in 3, 4 years of powerlifting is they get in, they're totaling like 1,500 or something, and they're like, man, 2, 3 years, I'm going to total 2K. And if they don't do it, they give up because they're like, oh, I didn't get it when I wanted to. But powerlifting is like that kind of sport where, you can get good into it's different for everyone because some people, and I reference this a lot of times to some of the best of all time. Some hit their peak at 25, 26 because, injuries happen and then the injuries kind of derail you. And some people, they get good or become their best at like 35, 36, because I'm 31 and I'm thinking, 3 to 5 more years more than likely because the goals I have, this is also one of your questions. Let's answer right now is, the end goal. I just got one of them, broken all-time total. I want to get 20 plus all-time records. I'm at 14 now, which I think is very doable still. And pull, obviously the big question, pull 500, which I know is going to happen this year. So it's like I'm at the point where, I've broken all the deadlift records, in 3 different weight classes. I'm up the heaviest delta of all time. 25, 3 times. I'll do it another 1 or 2 times at least. So when it's all said and done, like I said, I've had the heaviest delta regardless of weight class, 4 or 5 times. I pulled 500, which, 5 years ago, I remember when I first pulled 1,000, I didn't even think at that point I would do 1,100, because it's like, it's such a huge jump. It's the same with like 700 to 800, 800 to 900, etc. It's like, it doesn't seem like a lot, but like just putting 2 to 5 kilos on a lift once you're at an intermediate or experience level is hard, like putting 50 to 100 pounds on a lift you're already somewhat good at when you've already been doing it 5, 8, 10 years, that's very rare to do. Because yeah, that's the hardest thing as an athlete. And I kind of have experience with this in football is, like, and I'm glad I stopped football when I did, because man, if I did 4 or 5 years of college football, I definitely would have, I probably have not saying I don't, but I've only had, I think on record, maybe 2 concussions. So that's not horrible. I mean, most guys like, 6, 8, 10 concussions, man, the rest of your life, you're going to have trouble remembering and stuff like that, or just ankles, backs, and knees, man. You get decimated playing football. But I learned at a young age from football when to hang it up, because I was always a football player and everyone thought that's what I was going to do. But I had to make this tough decision at a young age, and I don't regret it because I know my body, if I ended up doing football till I was 22, 23, I'd have way more injuries, way more, possibly scar tissue, nerve damage anywhere. Football is just a reckless sport. Powerlifting can be too, but I still would say football is there's a lot more risky stuff that can happen that can destroy your body. It's okay. Come on, Billy.
The cat joins.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's like, because that's my goal is I want to stop powerlifting when, like I said, when I'm not on the full downward spiral. Because you see a lot of guys from the past, and it's hard because you always think you can do more. You always feel like you have a little bit left. So you're like, oh, I got another year in me. I got another meet prep, But sometimes that's not a bad thing, but you have to face the music. If you have like, because you've seen guys before, they have knee replacements, multiple. I mean, man, if I ever like had a knee replacement, man, I would it's not that I'm not passionate about powerlifting, but like my quality of life for the rest of my life would never
Yeah.
be the same, I would assume. So that's my goal, is to the next 2 years, like I said, pull 500, get 20 plus all-time records. I think I can break the total of 242 too. So I do all that and I'm 33, 34, whatever. I would be plenty happy, and I'll still be around powerlifting, but I've been doing 11 years at this point. So I've obviously already done it a long amount of time. But, you look at, trying to think of who did it best, but yeah, it's like when you see guys, they're still at their peak, but they hang it up because they know, hey, I got other opportunities in career, family, etc. That's very commendable, because most people, they do it too long till, you see an all-time dude who's not his best anymore, and you could tell he's not his best, kind of a shadow of his oneself. And I don't want that to be me, I don't want people to be seeing me like, man, I remember 3, 5 years ago, he was the man, and now he's just kind of, all of his lifts are 50, 80 pounds down. He's just kind of doing it just to do it, because I'm very competitive. So once I'm at that point where I'm like, tangibly, I cannot, uh, come on, you're good. I cannot improve to a decent amount, then it's like, is it worth all the sacrifices, the toll on your body, all the supplements you do, etc. So that's my goal, is to try to do all those things. And once I do it, just hang it up while I'm still healthy, not having debilitating injuries, So yeah, that's kind of my mindset in terms of those goals. I think it's very feasible. And that's the one thing that people always tell me, if you never joined the Marines, would you be even better? Because it's running all those miles but all those years in the Marines taught me, it's almost like I was doing RPE self-regulated before that was a thing. Because most of the time I would do a linear periodization type program. But obviously, if I ran 3 miles, worked 14 hours on my feet, I'm probably not going to be able to do what's prescribed because my
Yeah.
body's toast. So I had to really learn to get in tune with my body early on. Okay, what can I do? What can I not do? How, in terms of recovery and stuff. So that prevented me from getting a lot of injuries I could have had, and that's also why my squat is starting to blow up, because all those years in the Marines, I didn't really push squat that hard because I was just scared of getting injured. Because in the military, if you get injured outside of the work, they're not going to be happy. Your life's going to suck. Like if you go to your chain of command, you're like, hey, I tore my quad squatting. It was, I didn't mean to. It just happened. Yeah, they're not going to be like, oh, it's cool, bro. Like just relax. The next month, don't worry about doing anything at work. Just sit on your ass. So the back of my head, I was always worried about the risk of injury in the Marines with squats, and it paid off because I'm still very healthy. Like I said, the quad tear is the only real severe debilitating thing I've had in 11 years of powerlifting, and most guys who've been doing it as long as I have a lot more injuries to show for it, So
Yeah. I have like two similar questions.
yeah,
So
go for it.
when you took your deadlift from that like 750 to 900 range, were you coaching yourself at the time?
No, I had various coaches.
Okay.
The thing, like I said, a lot of it back then was the inconsistency, which I kind of already said. It's like if you train for 4 to 6 weeks and then don't train for a month, it's pretty hard to keep momentum in your training. But another thing was, from I'd say like 2016 to 2020, I didn't use straps at all in deadlift. So that's how I got really good at hook grips, because I didn't do a ton of volume back then. Like I would do a top set of 1 to 3 reps hook, maybe one back down, 3, 5, 6, whatever. No one will know how I did that, because if I try to do a set of 5 hook now, I'd be scared of tearing my thumb. But yeah, back then I didn't do much volume, but I got really good at figuring out how to do 1 rep max. So I think it's like 2 separate skills. The best analogy I heard is Mitchell Hooper said in a video recently. This is in terms of strongman, but he posed the question. Thor Bjornsson, what is it, 5'10", 5'15" now? 5'15", right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think
Thor
5'10".
Bjornsson, 5'10", yeah. I mean, I'm already thinking he's going to do more. Like he will do more
I think so too.
based off of how smooth that moves. I mean, it was crazy. But Thor, he has the heaviest strongman deadlift ever done in history, right? Why doesn't he have the 400 kilos for rep record? Because surely most people would be like, if he has the heaviest 1 rep max, how come he doesn't have the heaviest 880 for reps? And it's because it's 2 different skills. Like, I think the record's 4 or 5 reps. Maybe he just doesn't care. Maybe he could get it. But like, he's really good at doing like setting up once and doing one high intensity effort. And that's something I struggle with when I do heavier reps for deadlift. It almost feels like a different movement, because when I'm doing reps, I tend to use my back more with straps. So I tend to not, I don't worry about beating his upright. And I'm just like, I got to get these reps out of the way. So how you were to go about a heavier set of 3 to 5 reps, at least for me, is different than a single. Because, and that being said, you still need to do reps. I'm not saying just do singles and doubles, but from 2016 to 2020, I did minimal volume, but I focused on every rep matters. Every rep I did hook. And that was the difference is once I got to from 970 to 1025 and 1074, I started doing 2 to 3 back downs to 3 to 5 reps. I got some more volume to solidify me. But then if I go back, would I change anything? No, because, and that's why I tell people, even if what you're doing is like beyond simplistic, if you're improving, if you're still getting stronger, there's no need to change anything until you finally, get in that true plateau. Because, I got up to 970 doing very little volume. Now, maybe if I did more reps, could I have done more sooner? Maybe. But in my mind, I was like, man, this is working. Why? What's the need to change anything? So that's why I just was so modest until around 2020. Because that's when I started, realizing, damn, it's like a different level going from 960, 970 to over 1,000. That's when I had to change my mindset and change the training. I never did a lot of accessories. And this, once again, I can acknowledge I'm like gifted in the way of like how I'm built to deadlift. Because I never really did a ton of pauses. I didn't do, actually for a year or two, I did like a raw version of conjugate with a coach out of San Diego, but I never improved doing all that shit. So after that, I was like, man, I'm just going to do the basics. Cause like, I tried doing chains on the end deadlifts, banded deadlifts, things like that, reverse band deadlifts, especially reverse band. I never got anything out of that. Like, it's cool because if you do some of those bigger bands, it takes 100, 150 pounds off the bottom. But for me, it's like my lockout's never a weakness. So me doing heavy ass bands, reverse bands, it's like I already have good floor speed. So if I take 100, 150 pounds off the top, yes, technically I'm feeling the weight at lockout, but that like never translates, at least for me. I'm not saying it can't for some people. That's why you kind of got to experiment, because depending on your body, your leverages, or what your weakness is, some people could benefit from reverse bands. This offseason, I'm actually going to start doing some pause deadlifts. I think I'm at the point now where that could really benefit me. But yeah, that's what makes it so hard to judge people how to train and program them, is because everybody's different, right? As humans, we're all different genetically and our weaknesses. So yeah, from like 2015 to 2020, it was just do a top set of 1 to 3 reps, maybe do one back down if I feel like it, then do a bro workout of bodybuilding accessories. I would do leg press, leg extension, not very heavy. I would just kind of go about as a bodybuilder, because when I had a very strenuous job in the Marines, I was just thinking I'm already toast because of my physical. So when it came to accessories and the top sets, I wouldn't go as heavy as most would. But once again, I was worried about injury. I was like, let me just do what I can without overdoing it. Because if you're in like construction or a job that's super physical, I do believe to a degree, you're probably going to do some less volume or less intensity, because your job is already producing a lot of physical intensity. If you're lifting stuff all day, or like I said, oil riggers, military, now I can push a lot harder because I don't have those same circumstances, kind of holding me back in a sense, or just being a part of my daily life. So
Yeah, no, I definitely think that plays a big role. And then what did your were you going off like RPE or percentage or anything at the time when you were doing those like 2-ish sets of deadlifts?
yeah, so my coach, he would do like, just give me a straight weight, let's say 700 for a double. I would try to, if that's what was programmed, I'd try to do it. But like I said, if it was a day where I had a lot of activity, I ran multiple miles in the morning, maybe I do 660, 670 instead of 700. So I'd always try to get as close to the numbers prescribed as I could. But it goes back to like how I'm very realistic. Like, I never bullshitted myself. If I felt like shit, I was like, okay, I'm probably not gonna be able to do 700, but maybe I'd warm up and kind of be like, okay, 650, 660 is probably, like I said, it's like RP. Me being completely toast from work and physical labor, 650 is probably going to be around what 700 would be when I'm fresh. So I'd always have linear numbers, but then to base off my own judgment, I would turn in, and it would basically turn into RPE. And I'd be like, how much can I physically do close enough to that number, still getting the job done? I didn't worry about RP 8, 9, 10, whatever. It was always, squat bench deadlift, whatever I'm prescribed, I'm going to try to aim for it, but if I can, I'm going to get as close as I can. Because I think early on, just having straight numbers makes sense because your first few years of powerlifting, you're not going to have good enough body awareness to know. You know what I mean? Like my first 3, 4 years, I didn't know when I was at RP 8 or 9. I had no idea because I was so new to it and I hadn't pushed myself like that yet. I felt like once you're like intermediate to advanced, that's where like RP, reps in reserve, all those things come into play. But your first few years, it's just about pushing yourself, doing as much as you can. And then over time, you start to understand, because especially you probably noticed this too. Like I'm super fast twitch. People who are super slow twitch, like an RP 8, 9 single is going to look totally different. Like even at RP 9, it looks like I got like 100 pounds in the tank, but I don't. You know what I'm saying? So it took me years to figure out, okay, like it's always going to move because I'm super explosive, but then through trial and error and failure, that's when I realized, okay, this is probably around what RP8 is, even though it looks like nothing because, like I said, I'm super fast twitch and explosive. Everything always, squats and deadlifts, everything always moves till it doesn't. So I can't just gauge it off, oh, the speed looked good on that. It looked like I did it in a millisecond. And some people, they use those, those devices where they like latch it to the bar. It kind of tells you bar speed. I've never used those before. Maybe that would help. But like, I think it's better just to learn through your own experiences, like what you can handle or like what 'cause like I said, it's all trial and error in the beginning, like until you figure out your body, like whether you're fast twitch or slow twitch, or like when you truly grind, is it really RP 8, 9, 10 or whatnot? Because I've had clients, I only train 8, 10 people most of the time, just low scale. But yeah, I had clients before, I'm thinking, oh, he has nothing left. Then the clients tell me, no, that was RP7, bro. Like I swear, like it's not that hard. I'm like, bro, it took 3 seconds from out the hole for you to finish the lift. And then like one time a client, he's like, okay, I'm going to show you. So he sent me the RP7 or whatever set. And then he did the same set after the true failure. And I was like blown away. I was like, damn, he wasn't lying. Like he really did have 3, 4 reps in reserve because he was just more a slow twitch, grindy kind of lifter. Yeah, like I think the most I've ever grinded was like a second half into a lift. Like if I don't get it within 2 seconds, I'm not going to get it,
Yeah, my bench is the same way. I could do like an RP9 single, and it looks so fast. It's done in like half a
Yeah.
second, and then I'll just miss out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Dude, since you started working with Thomas, your squat has gone like crazy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Is there anything in particular? Because I know you mentioned you were like squatting with Andrew, and that played a big role. But do you think there's anything that like Thomas changed that helped a ton, whether it was technique or programming or anything?
Yeah, so with the program, and it's somewhat similar. Like I said, linear periodization / RPE, but we really worked on my hips because for years I've had a really bad what do you call it? Like a hip impingement. And I can't name off the top of my head, but I can send it after. But he sent me some exercises to help like with my hip disparity. Because especially like squat and deadlift, if one of your hips is super tight, like that just, it could cause so many issues. And it's something that I had early on. Like 4 or 5 years ago, I had it, but it wasn't as bad. I think all the running just kept my groin and hip and abductors very mobile. But now that I don't run as much, I just have to put a little more emphasis on whether warming up or just every day doing like hip mobility and hip exercises to help with the rotation of my hips. So that was one thing that I never did before that he really helped me with. Just prescribing certain things to strengthen and loosen my hips. Because yeah, in 2024, that's when I started to realize, damn, my hips, especially in sumo, they're feeling tighter. And like I said, I just think in the Marines, running all the time, it just naturally makes your hips more loose. I never had to do hip mobility or hip exercises, my first 7, 8 years, in the Marines powerlifting, because I was always so active with all the running we did and all the jumping, like all the exercises we do. But yeah, Thomas is really great at just observing you as an athlete. Like he doesn't, I don't blame it because a lot of these coaches, to make real money, you kind of take on too many people more than you'd like. So then it becomes like a cookie cutter thing. But with him, he's just, he sends voice texts or just, he doesn't go over the top with saying stuff, but everything he says, it's with purpose, and that's really like a great coach. They tell you what you need to hear, but nothing more, because it's like that with beginner athletes. Like maybe something's wrong. If you tell them one good thing, that's good. But if you tell them 3 to 5 different things, they're just going to be in their head and they're like, oh shit. So I didn't do this. Oh, like you can really only tell someone one or two things at most at once. And that's what his skill, his superpower is he's great at identifying a weakness. And he only tells you just enough so you know what's going on, but not enough to where you overthink it. And as you know, when you're lifting heavy enough, if you're thinking about too many things, you're just going to be in your head and slow down your brain, and you're not going to commit to the squat, bench, or deadlift when you're not overthinking.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I've worked on a lot as a coach too, because it's so easy. You work with someone week one, you name like 10 things. Like, hey, fix this.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't get anywhere because they can't implement 10 things at a time, you know?
Yeah, you gotta start like brick by brick. Even
Yeah.
if you have all these like things, I've learned that too. It's like you give them one thing, they get better and they reinforce that. Then if it's still an issue, then you could go on top of it.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's really what I've noticed him compared to anyone else I've ever coached is like he doesn't send you paragraphs of shit. He doesn't send you paragraphs of like critique and all that, especially because at this point he coaches me, he coaches Colton, he goes to a lot of high level lifters, because he's paid his dude. He still coaches plenty of, intermediate lifters, but he's been doing it. He said almost 10 years. So he's been a coach. That's the thing. Once you're a coach for 8, 10 years, you've obviously made a lot of mistakes, but you've learned from them. So yeah, it's the last year has been great with him. And that was like my motivation too, to after that meet, the Shack, I was like, man, like we worked so hard this year. I've improved so much in training, but it just hasn't showed on the platform. And that's why I was so happy to finally bring it together because then he finally, I was just like, he finally gets his flowers as a coach. It's like, I already know I've improved tremendously, like you said, but it gets beyond frustrating when your off season and training prep is going so well. And, that's the thing about meets, man. There's so many different variables. Like, for instance, Ghost Clash was my first meet in almost 2 years. So that was kind of just, I wasn't too mad. I was like, okay, we're knocking off the cobwebs. And he flew out to that one from Australia, which is cool. And then in July, he flew out again to Mobile, Alabama for the next meet. But then we show up and it's like 100 degrees, 70% humidity in the gym because it's like a warehouse gym with no AC. So the bar's like slipping off my back, during squats. I went 1 of 3 on deadlift because even when I chalk up my hands on squat, it's like I've never had this happen in my life. Like I've never ever struggled with grip, but my hands were sweating so bad that even though I was caking my shit with liquid chalk and powdered chalk, I was sweating so much, it's still just the chalk was melting off my hands. And and going into that, I was hoping to do over 1,000. So I opened 970. And like I said, I failed it twice and I barely got on the third. So then after that, I'm like, man, I did a whole prep. I know I got better, but like I said, you show up to a meet in the circumstances that day. It's like that in sports. It's like, you know, it's a football game and it's snowing outside. You're probably not going to run as fast like you could because you're going to be slipping. Like it's harder to plant and like make cuts. But the Shack was perfect, man. That was an amazing meet, well run. There wasn't a ton of variables like that. Like I said, I just kind of shit the bed with bench. Um, yeah, but this whole year bench has improved, and you can kind of relate. It's like you make improvements, but then it's finally time to reflect it, and then it just doesn't show. And then afterwards on paper, if you just look at the box scores, it doesn't look like I improved at all, but I know I did. I know I set PRs, or I gained confidence with Thomas this whole year. And that's a sign of a good coach, is like he's such a good guy. And, we talk 1 to 2 times a month too. He's very passionate about what he does. And so I want to improve and break records for me, but also for him because the amount of time and effort he's puts into me and for it to finally show for people to see, hey, he's a great coach, just like he is for Colton and anyone else. And this is finally like, hey, I can finally say, hey, I was already at a high level and he still helped me improve substantially. That only bolsters him as a good coach because it's easy, not easy, but if you have people who just start lifting, you can put 100 pounds on a year in them, because they don't even know what they're doing. They don't know how to squat, bench, deadlift. So you just teach them the fundamentals and basics, identify. But it's way harder to get someone to improve who's already at an elite level. I've already broken a ton of world records. So yeah, that's why I said we waited till now, because now I could say I finally did it, finally end of the year, doing what I wanted to do all year.
Yeah, I had Mike Touchera on recently. I'm sure you probably know who that is.
Oh, I met him once before. I only talked to him briefly, but he's a good guy.
Yeah, he's cool. And he was saying how he started working with one of his like first really high level athletes. He was like super excited, and then he went, "Oh no!" Like there's way more stuff that can go wrong, that can go right. And then he got like
Yeah.
really nervous because he was like, I might like mess this up. And it's like scary, but like Thomas just seems to nail it with so many high level athletes and like pretty quickly too. Like you guys hit some training momentum pretty fast. Also speaking of, do you mind running through like what did your split look like with Thomas going into this last meet?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. So, and I'm pretty sure this is pretty similar to Colton, maybe a slight twitch, but so I squat. I squat once a week. I deadlift, well, on squat day. So my primary squat's on Wednesday, primary squat. I'll do super light deadlift, 700, almost like technique singles just to reinforce. And then later in the week, I deadlift. And now something I started doing a month or so, 6, 8 weeks ago. Usually I warm up with a little bit of leg press to get my legs firing. But now I'm doing, you know, that's 400 or 500 pound squats for a set or two. One, because it's like you're practicing how you play.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds weird, but like when I squat before I deadlift, it just makes my hips way more mobile, more than anything. So moving forward, I'm on every deadlift day, I'm gonna, like I said, the weight doesn't matter. I can just work up to something 4 or 5, 550, just a set or two of 2 to 5 reps, enough to get my hips and legs firing, to where when I deadlift, it's when I wedge and get in position, I feel way more mobile. But most of the time, Thomas is big on squatting once a week, deadlifting once a week, benching twice a week. And I think Colton only benches once a week, if I'm not mistaken. He just has like an accessory day where he has a second day where he hammers a lot of upper body accessories, but he doesn't actually bench. That's one thing I asked him in the beginning. I was like, oh, should we like, because I told him, the last few years I've just benched twice a week, squatted once, deadlifted once. And yeah, he's not big on just, because you see in drug tested lifters, they're really big on high frequency, like squatting 3, 4 times a week, deadlifting 2, 3 times a week, benching 4, 5, 6 times a week. And he was like, "No, we don't need to do that." He started laughing. He's like, "Man, like the accessories is where we put intent to get those weaknesses." But he said that split is plenty, because that I remember like 2018, 2019, that's when the high frequency stuff got popular, at least in drug tested. And a lot of people just copied it, like, oh, that's the new trend. There's always trends. Like I remember in 2016, 2017, back then the trend was beltless. So everyone would post their crazy beltless deadlift, and it would go viral, and everyone would lose their shit. Like, damn, he did this beltless. What's he going to do with a belt? But then no one we know now, like some people are actually better beltless, or some people better. Like I still use a belt to this day, but a lot of people are, especially bigger guys, a lot of them don't use a belt because it kind of blocks them even more. You just if you learn how to brace properly, you don't necessarily need a belt. Because I've never really done beltless deadlift blocks. I think early on, if my first few years of my career, it would make sense. Like if I needed to learn how to trust myself and learn how to brace. But I mean, I've trained with, and that was the one cool thing about the Marines, why I think it didn't stop my development, is I was in San Diego for 4 years, and then I was in Washington, D.C., the DMV for 3, 4 years. So I got to train with like Zach Myers, Phil Herndon, 1, 2 times a month. And I trained with Askin Ruska, one of the best squatters in the IPF, 105 kilo, used to be lighter. But I remember one time I was training with Aston, and this was like 2020, 2021. So this is still when everyone was saying, oh, don't put a belt on until 60, 70% so you could practice actually learning how to brace. And he started working out. He put a plate on, just 135. He wore a belt. And I'm like, and I watched him warm up. He wore a belt for every set. And then after I was like, dude, why are you wearing a belt with 1, 2 plates? I mean, you're a 700-800-pound squatter. And then he's like, man, a belt's just a tool. He's like, you put it on, you practice using it. It's like, it's just a tool to keep you safe, and you press into it. So he's like, why would I not put on a belt? Why would I not just wear a belt every set? I mean, my core isn't going to get weaker. For a belt to do anything, your core has to you still have to brace and, be in those lower abs, inner and outwards, as they say, like an hourglass. He's like, you're bracing every time. You're working your core every time, whether you wear a belt or not. So if you prefer a belt, just put on a belt whenever the fuck you want. And that's when I stopped caring, because I used to do that with squats and deads. I used to be like, oh, deadlifts, I'm not wearing a belt till over 700 because I need to make sure I'm like using my core. But after that, I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to, like, it made sense when he told me that. So to this day, like, I wear a belt with every set, squat and deadlifts, warming up, whether it's a 135, 315, 500, I just put the belt on. I have those Pioneer Fit belts. So I'll put it on a lighter notch. I'll put it on a looser notch, but I'll still feel the belt pressing so I can just, practice bracing every time. Like I said, 5-7 years ago, it was all the craze doing anything, doing heavy as you could beltless because it just looked, it was cool. You went way more viral and everyone would just post all their beltless videos. But now we kind of know that it's not like I said, for some people though, I'm not saying it's like in anything, right? Circumstances matter. Some people could benefit from a beltless block or a beltless off season. But yeah, the last 4 or 5 years, I've never not worn a belt, even at lightweights, because at the end of the day, it's a tool. It's a tool that can benefit you, but you still have to push out and brace properly. If you just put a belt on and you're just like, it's not going to do anything. Just like when you're beltless, you still have to push in and out to reinforce your core. It's the same with the belt. So that was like a light bulb moment where I was like, oh, okay. Like, cause I'm not saying I believed all that shit, but I used to not wear a belt because I was like, oh, it's too light to wear a belt. Like, I shouldn't wear a belt at 1-2 plates because everyone always says, oh, up to 60-70%, don't wear a belt because you don't want your core to get weak. If you really need to work on your core, guess what? That's where planks, that's where doing exercises that work your core come in. Like if you want to get more core work, I mean, just wear your belt doing squats and deads, and then there's stuff you could do for accessories to further strengthen your core.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I'm the same way though. I put my belt on like at a red just because otherwise I feel like my positioning isn't the same. And I just move a little bit different and I get to heavier weights. Like where I used to put on my belt like at like 5 reds on deadlift. And then you're doing that and your technique's just like not quite as crisp if you start with
Exactly.
the belt because then you move the same every time.
Yeah, it's more of a mental thing because, like you said, if I don't wear it my first few warm-ups, once I put it on, it doesn't feel automatically better. It almost just feels worse because I'm like, oh, like I said, your positioning, how you feel loading in the hole on a squat or just doing a deadlift. It's just, and that's how, I train with Andrew Haas. He does the same thing too. He puts the belt on the moment, we start warming up. And anyone who asks me about that, what I just told you is what I always tell them. It's all preference. Like if you like doing your first few warm-ups without a belt for whatever reason, cool. But don't think you have to do that because it's too light and putting on a belt would be detrimental or not. It's going to make your core weak. No, trust me, like your core, you're still going to work your core whether you have a belt on or not. So it's all preference.
Yeah, it kind of makes you feel like weak whenever you put on a belt with like a plate. And then people see you warm up to like an 850 squat and you're like, oh no, actually it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. No, at the beginning it felt weird. Like you said, not corny, but I was like, I'd put a plate inside and I'm like looking both ways. I'm like, okay, hopefully no one sees. No one's like, damn, he's wearing a belt to do 135. But like,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, you're like, I look like I need a belt for 135 right now. This isn't good. But I wanted to ask you a couple more questions about like the specifics of your programming, I guess.
hmm
Does Thomas have you doing a lot of like accessories for like your squat, bench, and deadlift? Like, are you doing a lot of, I know you like warm up with some leg press and stuff sometimes, but like after your squats, are you doing a lot of like leg extensions or like after deadlifts, any like RDLs or anything like that? Or is it mainly just like the SBD work?
No, so I've always been big on accessories, even early on. Because like I told you, my first 5-6 years of powerlifting, I almost went too light on the SBD movements, but I always loved to push. I love the accessories, maybe because it was kind of like I said, a bodybuilding mindset. But I believe, that's like I said, early on, like I said, your first year or two, it is about learning the movement itself. So you could prioritize more at that point. But yeah, the last 5-7 years, like for instance, squat, and this is variable, but I'll just give you an example. So this week on squat, like I said, I'm going to go a little lighter because the abductor's still a little tender. But I'll probably work to 400 or 500 for some sets. And then after that, I'll do leg press. And with leg press, I'll go as I want to try to push heavier leg press, but probably in the past, I would just do single leg because I've had a lot of imbalances in the past. My left leg is like a half inch to an inch bigger on average. So a lot of times with leg accessories, I try to do a lot of single lateral, whatever you call it, like that term for single. So
Mm.
like if I do leg press, I like doing one leg at a time. So maybe I'll do 2 to 3 plates because you can't do as much. Um, and then leg extension. So leg press, leg extension, hamstring curl, basically anything I can. A lot of times I try to break it down one leg at a time just so I can, because, a lot of injuries and things can happen when one side takes over and you're too strong on one side. Um, that is why. And one thing I will start doing again is barbell, like you said, RDLs, barbell rows. But in the past, I wouldn't do those because, my right side's super dominant. So when I'm doing barbell movements, my right leg, actually left leg, but when it comes to upper body, my right side takes over. So I don't want to have my already dominant side have even more work. So a lot of my accessories are normally with dumbbells, cables. And one thing I like to do for quads too is I get on a bench. What do you even call this? It's like where you put like where your legs hanging off. Is this
Oh,
like
like
a,
Bulgarian split squats.
yeah, like some kind of a split squat? Because once again, something that really targets one leg at a time, and I can't cheat it. Because certain things are very easy to cheat, like leg press. Like
Hmm.
you could load 10, 20 plates, but is your quads really doing all the work? Probably not. You're just kind of be like, when I do leg press, I try to really just have my quad do all the work and really isolate and contract it. That's why I'm saying I kind of have almost a bodybuilder mindset when it comes to accessories. Because I don't believe, like, I remember early on, I thought, oh, if I leg press more, I'll squat more. But it's like, but then once you realize, whether high or low bar, a back squat is, your posterior chain, your quads, glutes, hamstrings, everything. Whereas a leg press, it really is just, so obviously you want to get your legs stronger, but it's not always about the weight. Not every exercise as a powerlifter for an accessory is about how much weight can I do for this. Because with that logic, one, you're probably going to be more likely to get hurt. And two, like I said, all these small little issues I've had, like I said, my hips, that's why my right leg, I really push my right leg harder when I do leg press, isolating, because I know the left leg's bigger. The left leg, because I don't have the hip impingement on the left leg, it's easier for my left leg to move and squeeze. So with accessories, I try to, if I can, isolate my weak points. Like I said, whichever side. Same with bench. Like sometimes I'll do bench. I'll do like reps like this, and then I'll do reps with each arm individually for the same reason. Um, you obviously still need to push accessories with a certain amount of weight, especially right now in my off season. I'm going to really push dumbbell incline, dumbbell flies. I'm really going to push the weight. I'm going to start gradual. Because in the past I would almost go too light, but there's a fine line between how hard and how much weight do you need to push with accessories to improve in powerlifting. But I think if you have a real weakness, if one side's truly a lot weaker, then you don't need as much weight. It's more about just isolating that side. Like I said, with doing single leg press, single leg RDL, hamstring curl, etc. Um, and I'm gonna be honest, last year or two, I haven't really pushed quads that hard because I'm scared of them getting bigger. Because I've already had big legs. And when people see me squat, it's like my hamstring is digging into the back of my calf, even at parallel. So in my mind, I'm like, if my legs grow another inch, man, is it gonna be even harder to get calls? It sounds weird, but it's like you want big legs until you get big legs. And then people are always telling you squat high when it's not that you're really that high. It's just like when your hamstring becomes like a inner quad in a way, like I said, for me to hit depth when I'm squatting, I feel my hamstring push into the back of my calf. It's almost like a spring effect because my legs have gotten so much bigger. But this off season, I'm actually going to try to push weight more with quads, which is something I haven't done in years. Uh, like I said, it kind of sounds stupid saying it, but I was scared the last year or two of my legs getting that much bigger. It obviously doesn't affect me at deadlift or anything. And one thing I kind of found out recently, the last 6 months, is for me, like I've worn different brands of sleeves. I've worn Pioneer Fit. I now wear the ones that Thomas has a partnership with, Andy Wong's new company, Zero W, or not Zero W. That's Thomas's brand. I forgot the name, but like I can't have super tight sleeves. Like they can be tight, but not like restrictive tight, because that makes it harder for me to hit depth in a way. Like I'm almost like having them neutral tight, because some people benefit from going 1 to 2 sizes down so that it bunches up more and they get more power and more spring effect. But with me, like, because I wore the Iron Rebels before the ones I have now, and it was so much harder to hit depth in those because it was already squeezed and pulling this so tight. When I get to parallel, I almost felt restricted where I couldn't like sit into it with the back of my
Yeah.
leg.
No, I know just
Yeah.
what you mean.
Yeah. Because, like I said, some people, depending on their legs and stuff, like some people could go really, really tight, but then also it's just nice to be able to put on my sleeves in 5, 6 seconds, not like break out and get drenched in sweat, have a pump in my forearms because I'm like, like So a practicality too, it's like the sleeves I have now are like they're tight, but they're not like as long as I pull my socks up, within 2 seconds they're at my knees,
Mhm.
and I don't have to like. It's almost like you get paranoid because you're just like, oh fuck, are these gonna get on? Like, you know.
Yeah, I've had sleeves so tight before because like I had tiny sleeves and then I went up a weight class and I was like just trying to squeeze them on still that I'd get done putting them on like, whoa, I have like a back pump right now. Like hopefully this doesn't
Yeah.
impact my session.
Yeah, and
But
you're like soaked in sweat, and it's almost like you already worked out. And I'm like, damn, I haven't even done the real work yet. Like,
yeah, exactly. Um, and then I really had like one more question. To be totally honest, I when I looked up Oregon time zones, I did not realize that there were two. So
oh, there is? I didn't even know that. Shit.
yeah, I looked it up and there was like I'm pretty sure unless I looked at it wrong. So I totally got like the time wrong. So I just have like one more question for you because then unfortunately I got to run because it was like an
Oh, you're
hour
good.
later than I realized. But
Yeah.
how long did it take you uh after you tore your quad to like get back to kind of like each milestone? Like how long did it take you after you tore it to squat like 200 and 500 and then 800?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I tore the quad last July. You know, the first week I couldn't really move much. I was bedridden for 3, 4 days actually, because I couldn't even contract my quad enough to get out of my bed. So I'd have my father and brother help carry me to the bathroom that's a mere 10 feet from my room. It was embarrassing. I felt like an old man, you know, just like when you get an injury like that and you need to rely on other people, that's like it's crazy at first. But then within 2 weeks, I was able to start doing body weight loading because I would go in the swimming pool because that's my coach. He has an Australian PT who advised me. So he said if you get in the buoyancy of the water, it's going to allow you to bend your leg more than you can just normally. So I would go in the pool, do body weight squats and lunges once I could even partially bend, and I would get on the bike, you know, just raise the seat higher. So even if I could only bend it like 2, 3 inches, I'll get on a bike because he told me like first 2, 3 days, that's when inflammation is the worst. So then you can ice and stuff the first 2, 3, 4 days. But once the inflammation is not prolonged and is starting to go down, the sooner you get to actively rehabbing, one, it's going to prevent scar tissue, and two, you're just going to get back sooner. So within 3 weeks, I was squatting the bar. I was like, shit, you know, that I didn't think it happened that fast. By weeks 5 to 6, I was doing 1 to 2 plate squats with a bar on my back. So every 2 to 3 weeks, I go up like 100 pounds. So 6 weeks in, I was able to do 225, 300 with another 4, 6 weeks. Cause I didn't force it too much. So I went from like 300 pounds to 6 weeks in to 4, 500, you know, 8, 10 weeks later. Um, but it took 6, 8 months to truly get back because it was mental. Because even once it was like recovered enough and I could feel the integrity of the muscle was there, you could probably relate. When you strain a muscle in your leg, once you start loading upwards of 80, 90% of what you were before, it's just your mind. There would be times where I'd still compensate with the right leg because deep down I didn't know if it could truly handle it, you know, because you almost get traumatized like PTSD. Because if I'm warming up but I don't feel good, I almost get flashbacks to the pop and how the muscle felt when it separated. So yeah, to truly answer your question, it took probably 6, 8 months to where I felt confident again. Not only like physically, my leg was back to normal, but I was able to load 700 plus and not have any doubts or any like, you know, not try to compensate and just be like, hey, you can normally the squat down, be completely symmetrical and normal. And that's the advice I give to most people is when you have a grade 2 muscle tear, like a grade 1, like I said, it's like a strain, but a grade 2 or worse, it's like you really just have to take more time to mentally get back to like, you know, because I've talked to a lot of people who've done this, you know, same like a grade 2 with a pec or a ladder. And it's always the same thing where within 6 to 10 weeks, physically you're back. Physically, you could load heavy again, but it usually takes a few more months where mentally you're confident enough where you can load and not be scared of like, oh, is it gonna pop or is it gonna strain again?
Mm.
So yeah, I would say 6 to 8 months is what it took to truly get back to like 750, 800 range, but also mentally be secure, not just because physically it's crazy. Like even for the quad tear, like I said, within 6, 8 weeks, I had full range of motion. I was loading it, but I took extra time just because mentally, and that's how it is with most injuries. The hardest part is getting back mentally, not physically. Because even once you know you can load it, mentally, a lot of times you will still hesitate or have doubts when you start loading it like that. You know.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm going through that right now. It's been like 8 weeks since I tore my hamstring, grade
Oh
two as
shit.
well. And
Yeah.
like I pulled like 200 kilos the other day, which is like 60% or something, and like I was so in my head, you know, I'm like almost getting like phantom pains, like is it gonna like tear again? And I was like
Yeah.
totally fine, like got done, not sore at all, but I was just so in my head, you know.
No, because you at 6, 8 weeks, realistically, within a month, you could probably load 70, 80+%. I'm not saying do that, but that once again reinforces like your body heals a lot quicker than you realize physically. Like as long as you do the rehab and you're aggressive enough, like you are. Um, but yeah, it'll probably take another 2, 4 weeks than you think it will until, like you said, you're not in your head. You could just lift, you could just lift normally, not have these inhibitions in your mind. Like because that was me at the meet just now. Like I said, I popped the abductor. Every squat, like I was shaking because I think my CNS was recovered. But every squat, I was like praying to God. I'm like, please, man, just hold up. Like, so I'd get to
Yeah,
parallel and I'd be like, okay, okay, okay. And the moment I felt I was at depth, I'm like, okay, we need to get up out of here. And every rep, every every time I stood up, I got more confident. Like, okay, I did my opener. Okay, no issues. I did my second. Okay, no strain, no tenderness. The third, still a little nervous, but that was finally, I was like, okay, I'm shutting off my brain. I'm going to squat to death. Whatever happens, happens. I can't think about that, because when you're lifting heavy, man, you can't be thinking about the what ifs. It's only going to it's going to, one, it'll make you more likely to fail and make an error. But yeah, it's just, I've learned like the abductor from the quad last summer. It's like because I deadlifted like 500 a few days ago and it felt good, but I still feels a little tight. So every week my goal is to go up, 20, 30, 40 pounds, just gauge where it's at. But like the active rehab is like that. Every workout, you're just kind of feeling what you could do. Because regardless, you doing 400 kilos is still a win because you're getting blood in that hamstring. And that's your goal is every day and every workout, just continue to strengthen and get blood in that hamstring, which you just tore because that's what's going to make sure you have a better health outcome. Because like I said, back in the day, I remember 10, 15 years ago, football, you get an injury, oh, ice it, sit on your ass, just wait till it gets better, ice, ice, ice. But ice is actually, once the inflammation isn't going anymore, ice makes it worse. Like, have you heard that? Like literally
yeah, I
the
have.
guy who, the guy who created the acronym for ice later came out and said, hey guys, I thought at the time this made sense, but no one will now. It's like ice is good the first few days, but then it's warm, active recovery. It's like doing things to get blood in the muscle, doing things to warm up the muscle that is going to actually improve and make you get back there faster, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate the advice because hearing that, I'm like, okay, yeah, I got time. I got
Yeah,
time.
man. No,
No,
you're good, man. If you're
yeah,
already doing 400 kilos, yeah, within a month, you'll be at 500, 600. But that's the thing is, it's better just to play it a little bit safe. Like I said, take an extra week or two per milestone. Like I said, if you're thinking, okay, in a month, 500, 550, and then, like you'll get there. But it's just better to play it safe because if you don't have a meet in the horizon, who cares if it takes an extra 2, 4 weeks to get back to like 100%? Because there's no timetable and rush for you. So getting back, rushing to it, and then possibly tweaking or aggravating it, that's just going to get you back to point, getting you back to the initial point where you're paranoid and scared and like the pain was there.
Mhm.
So good luck with that rehab, bro.
Yeah, thank you, man. And sorry again, I got to cut us off a little early because I've had a lot of fun, but I totally thought I had another hour if needed. But
Oh, you're fine, man. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But thanks for coming on. Do you want to let people like know where they can find you or anything?
Yeah. So I'm mainly on Instagram, Dan_Griggs. I have posted some videos on YouTube, which I might do again. Honestly, I might
Yeah, do
just
it.
find a bunch of old videos and post them to YouTube. More so, you could probably relate 10, 15 years once we're done. I could almost have like a record online,
Mm.
when I have kids or whatever, like I could show them, hey, this was me back in the day. People always say, back in my day, I'll be like, hey, this is
Yeah,
me
yeah.
in my day. Look,
Like
it's
mine
on
was actually
YouTube.
real. I was actually really strong.
Yeah, I didn't. It's like when the old man's like, yeah, I bench 1,000 pounds. I'm like, sure, bro.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't count unless you got a video.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I would be really cool to see some YouTube videos, some like training vlogs. I'm sure people would like that too.
Oh yeah, like it's just hard. Like I mean, there's apps to help you splice it, but it would be awesome if I found like a dude who could just shadow me in the gym. But then I'm also like, oh, I don't want to be that dude who has like a. Because you ever been to those influencer gyms where they got like the guy following them around and it's kind of corny?
Hmm.
But I definitely want to do some of those videos next year, just more so to look back on. It'd just be cool
Hmm.
to see them when I'm done. Like, oh, I remember in this prep I was doing this, and like I have like a little workout documented. You know.
Yeah, one day it'll be like 70 looking back. Like, how the hell did I dead 1,000 pounds for reps? Be crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks again, man, for coming on. This podcast will be up either like tonight, maybe tonight, not for sure. And then if not, it'll be up like tomorrow for sure. So it'll be up pretty quick, and I'll let you know and everything.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you.